Nobody wants a pregnant fat girl. She
is my business. Dalu.
He sent everyone out. The garage was concrete and cold, one overhead light, no cameras. The only person Kiro Min permitted to stay was Kang Soo, which meant this was a conversation that would not exist once it was over. Kiro stood with his right hand flat on the roof of the car. He was looking at the door, not at the man behind him. A man said something to her. Kang Soo waited. Nobody wants a pregnant fat girl. He said it the way he said things he could not reconcile. Flat, precise, without decoration, like intelligence that kept coming back wrong no matter how many times he ran it. Kang Soo had stood beside Kiro Min for 11 years, and he understood in the silence that followed that this was the first time in all of those years that the thing Kiro could not resolve had nothing to do with business. Kiro opened the car door, paused, closed it again without getting in. He stood there. Let me tell you how we got here. 12 hours earlier, in apartment 4B, the jacket was already over his arm. Amara noticed that first, not what he was saying. She had stopped tracking the words 2 minutes before, somewhere around the part where Oluwadare Bankole explained, in the patient voice of a man managing something difficult with great personal restraint, that he had thought about it. A long time. He needed her to understand that. She stood very still in the middle of the living room, hands clasped just above her stomach. The small piece of orange Ankara fabric on the table beside her caught the overhead light the way it always did, warm and exact, the same way it had caught the light in her mother's hands the morning she left Lagos. Dare was not a cruel man. That was the specific and terrible thing. He was ordinary. He had made a calculation, and she was no longer in it. And he was announcing this with the tact of someone explaining to a stranger that their seat at a table had been given to someone else. He said it the way he said most things. Measured. Nobody wants a pregnant fat girl. He opened the door. He paused, the pause that waits for a response that would make the leaving easier. She did not give it to him. He left. The apartment held the silence the way a closed room holds the sound of something that cannot be unsaid. Amara put one hand on her stomach, exactly where her grandmother used to press a secret into her skin when she was small. A quiet thing, transferred from palm to pulse. She did not cry. She breathed, in, out, 6 months of life moving gently under her hand, completely unbothered by what had just walked out the door. One of us is going to be fine, she thought. She decided, in that particular breath, to agree with the baby. Before we go any further, if you are not subscribed yet, do it right now. Hit that subscribe button and turn on your notifications, because stories like this one drop on this channel regularly, and you do not want to miss a single one. Share this with someone who needs a story like this in their life today. Now, back to Amara. The water pipe on the 4th floor chose its moment with terrible inconvenience. 10 o'clock that night, lobby bench, small bag, everything she had left, which was considerable, even if she would not have said so. She had pulled her twists up and put her sandals on before coming downstairs. Composed herself before anyone could find her otherwise. The specific discipline of a woman who has decided her face belongs entirely to her. The front doors opened. Kiro Min, in a charcoal suit with a deep burgundy shirt open at the collar, walked through them at 10:14 and read the lobby in the half-second he used for all spaces. Then he saw her. Once for information. The second time was the problem. She was the warmest thing in a lobby built to be cold. That word arrived before he could stop it. Warm, and he filed it as inaccurate and continued walking. A 6 months pregnant woman on a bench not designed for waiting, composed in a way that was costing her something, not peace. held precision. He recognized it without difficulty. He had worn it himself for 20 years. He told himself this was why he noticed. He continued toward the elevator. He noticed the slight elevation of her chin. He told himself this was information about the lobby. He was a man who controlled this building and this block and several arrangements that moved through both without requiring anyone's awareness, and there was no rational reason for the warmth of one woman in the lobby to register as anything beyond data. He filed it a third time. He filed it as irrelevant. He reached for his cuff. His hand stopped mid-reach. Minho, his younger lieutenant, was already near the bench. When the woman asked him something, Minho gave her a reflexive bow. Complete, unhesitating, the exact bow he used when delivering reports to Kiro. Kiro had stopped walking, not visibly. No perceptible shift. Just no longer in motion. Kang-soo, 2 steps behind him, registered the pause with the precision of a man who had never needed anything explained twice and had made a career out of not explaining it. Phone call, rapid Korean. 12 minutes and the service team was active. Kiro did not look at her again before reaching the elevator. He looked at her once, reflected in the closing doors, in the half-second before the metal sealed. He did not address it in the morning. The pipe was fixed before dawn. No note, no name. Amara stood in her kitchen in the pale gray Seoul light and tried to locate the feeling she was having about this. She called Deja. Deja, who had been her closest friend since their first year at university and who treated truth as something too useful to soften, was in Lagos, eating something, not fully attending to her phone. 1 sentence about Dare. Surgical. 3 more. Practical, focused, exactly what Amara needed. Then, in the gap between one breath and the next, 1 joke. So specific and so precisely aimed that Amara laughed before she was ready to. And then, Deja set something down. Wait, you said he had the pipe fixed overnight? Amara confirmed. He came down himself, didn't he? Not a question. A silence on the Lagos end. The kind Deja used when something accurate was arriving, whether you prepared for it or not. Baby. Her voice dropped 1 register. Men like that do not come down themselves. The kitchen was pale gray January light, and Amara stood in it holding her phone, and the feeling she had been trying to name since she woke up had a shape now that she recognized and did not especially welcome. He didn't send someone, Deja said. He came himself. This is important to understand about Amara Obi. She does not wait for information to find her. She traced the building's management entity through 3 separate registries and had a name by the following morning. The name led to an address on the 42nd floor of her own building. She was not entirely sure whether this was efficient or monstrous. She went on a Tuesday, in the forest green dress, because she had already decided this was not a conversation she was going to walk into looking like she needed anything. The waiting room outside Kiro Min's private office communicated without a single unnecessary word that the man behind the closed door was not someone whose schedule bent to your preferences. Amara sat in it for 22 minutes. She looked at the Seoul skyline photograph on the far wall and thought about what kind of man decorates his office with evidence of what he already owns. When the door opened, he walked out of a meeting of 6 men and saw her. The 6 men walked past her without looking at her. Kiro stood in the doorway, and nothing in his face changed. Nothing, not a degree, and somehow that was the thing. Not that he was cold, but that he was completely still. And the stillness had weight, and the weight was entirely focused on her in a way he would not have been able to explain to anyone, including himself. Kang-soo, half a step behind him, tilted his head exactly 2 degrees to the right. She stood. She told him his building had flooded her floor and she would like to discuss his maintenance protocols. He looked at her the way he looked at things he had decided to fully understand. Not quickly, not rudely. With the complete and patient attention of a man for whom missing something once was not a habit he had ever formed. She was in the green dress, the gold threading catching the office light. Pregnancy carried high and visible, and not 1 degree apologized for in any plane of how she held herself. He had a thought, and recognized it with the specific irritation of a man whose thoughts usually went where he directed them. She dressed for this. She dressed for this room, he said. Come in. A junior operative near the back wall said something, not loudly, the casual arithmetic of a man who looked at a pregnant woman in an office like this and made a quick private calculation about her relevance. Amara's response arrived without volume and without heat. It carried the exact vocabulary of a woman who had decided a long time ago which fights deserved her precision. 2 sentences. The room went still. Kang-soo excused himself. Not to go anywhere, but to go somewhere his face could do what it was currently doing without involving Kiro in the management of it. Kiro did not excuse himself. He stayed in his chair and looked at her. And this look was different from the lobby look, different from the reflection in the closing elevator doors. This was full registration, the kind of look a man gives something he cannot explain to himself, and knows it. He turned the gold ring once on his finger, slowly. He was still. He offered the building credit, the compensatory arrangement, the transactional resolution. She refused it, without anger, without performance, with the calm of a woman who had decided, before she walked up to the 42nd floor, that her worth was not a negotiation she was available to participate in. The silence that followed was something he had not experienced in his own office. He did not turn the ring again. He held it between his thumb and forefinger. He let the silence be what it was. Minho, Kiro's younger lieutenant, had decided without consulting anyone that Amara was simply a good person and that the correct response to a good person in your operational space was to make her feel welcome. He was in the hallway when she came out of the office and asked if she had found everything all right. He said that if she needed anything for the apartment, anything at all, he was including the obvious things, by which he meant appropriate to her current. Here he gave a small reflexive bow in the direction of her pregnancy. Complete, organizational, the exact bow he used when delivering reports to Kiro. Amara looked at him, then at the bow, then back at him. That's very kind, she said, with the dry, unhurried stillness of a woman who had decided he was too sincere to be worth offending. Kang-soo, 3 feet away, held eye contact with Minho for exactly 4 seconds and then turned back toward the wall and said nothing. The silence was more complete than any sentence. Minho began explaining that he had not meant anything in particular, which led to a clarification, which led to a second clarification, which made the original bow look straightforward by comparison. From behind the closed office door, Kiro was on a phone call. He was not on a phone call. If you have been watching Kiro Min in this story and you think he already knows what is happening to him, drop a comment right now. And if you think he is still telling himself she is a logistical situation, drop that too. I want to see both sides. The rooftop was Amara's discovery, the one place in the building with enough sky to breathe in. Seoul in January, low and blue-gray, the Han River catching what was left of the afternoon light at the far edge of the city. She did not expect to find anyone there. He was there. A call, a decision, the kind of thinking that needed actual cold air. The call ended. He stayed. She stayed too. The conversation that began was about building security protocols. It stopped being about building security within 3 exchanges. His voice changed when he spoke to her. She had noticed this the second time it happened and managed the noticing by treating it as data. Lower, slower, more careful, like a man aware of something fragile in the vicinity who had not yet decided what to do about it. She told herself this was not the kind of data she needed to keep. He reached toward the folder she was holding. His hand stopped short of contact by the width of a decision he made and then did not entirely make. A sentence began. You should. He did not finish it. She waited. The cold between them had nothing to do with the temperature. He looked at the Han River and did not finish the sentence, and she stood beside him in the January air and did not ask him to, and the unfinished sentence sat there between them in the cold like something alive, something neither of them was prepared to name. 2 days later, Marcus arrived. Marcus Obi, Amara's older brother, who had flown from Lagos not because she called him, but because he had decided she should not be managing this alone, walked into the building lobby with one carry-on bag and the specific ease of a man who was the son of Ichi Obi Chukwuemeka Obi, traditional ruler of Enugu State, and had never once walked into any room that made him feel small. Amara saw him through the lobby glass, and her face did something her public composure did not usually permit. That evening, jollof rice and pepper soup, crayfish and uziza leaves and palm oil, and the specific balance of pepper her mother had taught her. Not a recipe, a memory made edible. The smell of it moved through the penthouse in a way that rearranged what the space thought it was. Kiro passed through the kitchen on his way to somewhere he was going. He was not going anywhere. He adjusted the thermostat without looking at it, moved the knife rack back from the counter edge with 2 fingers, lifted a heavy pot to the back burner without being asked, without looking at her, continuing to speak about something so operationally irrelevant that neither of them would recall a word of it 10 minutes later. His sleeves were pushed back, the tattoos on his forearms, angular, deliberate, ink committed to things his face had never discussed. She watched his hands. She knew she was watching his hands and told herself she was simply monitoring the situation. His hands. The way they moved through her kitchen, as if it were somewhere he already knew. She pressed her thumb to the inside of her opposite wrist, her grandmother's gesture, the one passed from palm to pulse when you needed to remember something mattered. She did not know she had inherited it. Kiro, his back half turned, was already watching. He looked away before she looked up. Marcus appeared in the doorway. He looked at Kiro. He looked at Amara. He looked at his phone. He went back to looking at his phone. His face, in the 4 seconds before he managed it back to neutral, was the most complete essay anyone had written in this penthouse without a single word. Later, she stood at the stove with her hand resting low on her stomach and spoke quietly, in Igbo, in the words her grandmother had given her for speaking to fear. Onye wetara oji, wetara ndu. The one who brings cola brings life. She was telling herself she had survived worse. She had said this before in this story. This time she was lying about different things, and she knew it. Hana Min, Kiro's mother, was not a woman who arrived anywhere accidentally. She had arranged the meeting in the traditional tea house in Bukchon through the building's property management office. Amara traced it back to Hana's name within the same morning she received the invitation. She went anyway. She wore the deep indigo Ankara-inspired wrap skirt and the gold-accented blazer because she was Ichi Obi's daughter, and she had made that decision before she walked in. The tea house was low table, celadon cups, paper screens, and the specific silence of very old wood that had witnessed many things and recorded none of them. Hana poured tea before she said anything difficult. She poured a second cup without being asked. Send this to someone who needs to see how a woman holds a room that was designed to make her feel like a guest. Hana asked precise questions, not cruel. The precision of a woman who had spent 40 years managing the weight of the Min family legacy and knew exactly which angles revealed a person's true architecture. Amara answered each one without defensiveness and without performance, with the calm of someone who had been in rooms where people decided her value without her input her entire adult life, and who had learned that how you held yourself in those rooms was the one thing they could not take from you. The tea house did not go the way Hana had planned. Midway through, the smell of the pepper soup arrived, embedded in the silk of Hana's blouse from the penthouse that morning, entirely impervious to the celadon and the old wood and the careful quiet of a space that had never previously encountered crayfish and uziza at full strength. Hana's face moved through 7 distinct states in approximately 4 seconds. She set down her cup and asked, without any change in her expression, which spice produced that particular depth. She said it was for her cook. Both women looked at each other. Neither of them said anything else about the cook. Outside, in his car on the narrow Bukchon street, Kiro sat with his reflection in the window for 30 seconds. He turned the gold ring. He thought, I want. He did not follow that thought with a reclassification. He sat with it. His driver checked the rearview mirror once and did not check it again. Amara came out of the tea house into the corridor and Kiro was there. He had sent Kang-soo to bring the car around. He offered no explanation for why he was in the corridor of a tea house in Bukchon at 5 in the afternoon. She did not ask. She said his mother was very clear about what she wanted. He said that had always been true. She asked why he was there. He did not answer. They moved at the same moment in the same direction. He to let her pass, she toward the exit, and for one full breath they were close. Very close. His hand rose toward her arm. The contact did not come. 1 centimeter. He was not moving toward her, and he was not moving away, and the hand was simply there, suspended at the exact distance of a decision he had not finished making, and the cold of the corridor was the warmth of his hand not quite touching her arm, and she was not breathing the way she had been breathing before, and he was watching her face with something in his expression that had no name he was willing to give it. Then Kang-soo's voice on his phone. A name. Something operational. Kiro stepped back. The corridor reasserted itself. The distance between them became the correct distance again. She walked toward the exit. He watched her go. The gold ring turned once in his fingers. The weight of 1 centimeter and a phone call settled over everything like something dropped from a very great height, still falling. What do you think is going to happen next? Leave your prediction in the comments because what comes next is not what either of them planned. The complete file on Amara Obi arrived in Kiro's office at 8 o'clock that evening. He read it once. He did not read it again. He sat with it. The information that she was the eldest daughter of Ichi Obi Chukwuemeka Obi, traditional ruler of Enugu state, a man whose full title required a sentence to deliver, that in her own community, in the geography where she was raised, she was addressed with the specific deference reserved for the daughters of titled men. She had been standing in his building for weeks, presenting herself as simply Amara, because she had decided before she left Lagos that she would be chosen for herself or not at all. She had not offered the credential. She had not wanted the credential to change anything. He turned the gold ring. He thought about the lobby, the elevator doors, the rooftop. The knife rack moved 2 inches from the counter edge. Every moment he had placed her in a category, she had been standing outside the category entirely, and she had never once corrected him because she had not needed him to see the title. She had needed him to see her. The garage was concrete and cold, 1 light, no cameras. He sent everyone out. He called Kang-soo in. He stood with his right hand flat on the roof of the car. He was looking at the door, not at the man behind him. A man said something to her. Kang-soo waited. Nobody wants a pregnant fat girl. He said it the way he said things he could not reconcile. Flat, precise, without decoration. Like intelligence that kept coming back wrong no matter how many times he ran it. Kang-soo had stood beside Kiro Min for 11 years, and he understood, in the silence that followed, that this was the first time in all of those years that the thing Kiro could not resolve had nothing to do with business. Kiro opened the car door, paused, closed it again without getting in. He stood there. Kang-soo said 1 word, "Boss." Kiro got in the car. That night, Hana told her son the thing she had never said, about his father, about the cost of what she had allowed to be built into him before he was old enough to refuse it, about watching a woman sit in a tea house in Bukchon and refuse to be made small for 45 minutes without a single visible act of resistance. "She reminded me of someone I stopped being a long time ago," Hana said. She picked up her cup. She did not call it permission. It was permission. In the same hour, in Amara's apartment, Marcus sat across from her at the small kitchen table and told her what their father had said when Marcus told him about the pregnancy. Not the verdict she had been bracing for. Their father had said, "Make sure she is not alone," twice. Then he had asked Marcus to give Amara the words, the Igbo phrase her grandmother had used, the same phrase Amara had been saying to her fear for months. Onye wetara oji, wetara ndu. You are welcome. Your presence is not a burden. It is a gift. Her father had sent it across a continent because his daughter needed to hear it in the words only their family used. Amara pressed her thumb to the inside of her wrist. She breathed. Marcus picked up the spoon from the soup pot and took one quiet taste. Your pepper soup is better than Mama's. A pause, long enough to be felt. Do not tell Mama I said that. Amara laughed, the first completely unmanaged laugh she had produced in weeks. The following morning she packed her bag. A different building, a reduced proximity. The decision was rational. She told herself this several times on her way down in the elevator. It was also the decision of a woman afraid of what happened if she stayed, which was a different thing entirely, and she knew it, and she packed the bag anyway. Kiro was at the security desk when she came through the lobby. She had not expected him there. He was holding a folder. Inside it, a formal placement transfer for her Arts Foundation housing, rerouted through a heritage and cultural exchange fund, the lease in her name, fully funded for the remainder of her placement and 6 months beyond. Not a gift, not a transaction, a decision. The decision that could have gone the other way, the rational direction, the one that cost him nothing and did not because of her. He had known where this moment would lead when he signed it. He had signed it anyway. He placed the folder on the desk between them and said nothing for a moment. He straightened his cuffs, one precise tug on each sleeve. His men, ranged at a careful distance behind him, went completely still. They had learned what that gesture meant. He said, "This is yours. You don't owe me anything for it." He did not say he knew who her father was. He did not say he had stood in a garage the night before and said a thing out loud that he could not unsay. He said only that it was hers, and the sentence he did not say pressed against every word of the sentence he did. She looked at the folder. She looked at him. She pressed her thumb to the inside of her opposite wrist, the gesture she did not know she had inherited, and he watched her do it, and she saw him watching, and for the first time in this entire story, both of them were looking at each other at exactly the same moment with exactly nothing managed about either of their faces. She understood the garage and the corridor and the rooftop and the knife rack moved 2 inches from the counter edge. She understood all of it. A man who had built his entire life around, never needing anything he could not control the outcome of, had walked into a lobby with a folder, said nothing except that it was hers and she owed him nothing, and meant every word of the silence around it. She picked up the folder. She said, in the way her grandmother had taught her to speak to things that mattered, "Dalu." Thank you, in Igbo. Not performed, not calculated. The way a person thanks someone they actually see. He received it without the calculus. He said nothing. He did not need to. At the lobby entrance, Marcus stood with his bone bead bracelet on his wrist and watched through the glass. He did not come in. He sent one voice note to Lagos. "She's okay, Nam." Nothing else. If you are not subscribed yet, do it right now. This channel drops stories like this one regularly, and you do not want to miss a single one. Later, on the rooftop, she was there. He came. Neither of them was pretending about the reason. The winter light was the same. The Han River in the distance was the same. What was different was that neither of them was managing anything about themselves for the other. The conversation was short. When it ended, when neither of them had used a word like love and neither of them needed to, his hand found hers, not reaching and stopping but placed there. Deliberate, quiet, a man making a decision he was not performing for anyone. She did not move away. They stood in the cold together and looked at Seoul in January. The old neighborhoods pressed against the new towers, the low light pressing the river into silver. A city that had never asked either of them to be there and had no opinion on what happened next. Behind them, somewhere on the floor below, Minho was delivering an updated operation summary to Kang-soo and had just, for the first time in this entire story, arrived at the correct reading of the situation. His expression communicated this in full. Kang-soo did not look at him. He did not need to. Send this to someone who deserves to be chosen like this, right now. In the Igbo tradition, a child born in circumstances of love and difficulty is sometimes given a name that carries the story of both. Amara's father, calling from Lagos the night Marcus sent the voice note, had already chosen one for the baby. It meant the road that led somewhere after all. He had not asked permission. Some things, he said, do not require asking. What was between those two people on that rooftop was not finished. It was not simple. It would not be simple, but it was real and it was theirs. And neither of them had to perform a single thing for it to be true. Her ex had said nobody wants a pregnant fat girl. He had never been more wrong about anything in his life. And if you want to see what comes next for Kiro and Amara, subscribe, turn on your notifications, and do not go anywhere, because they are only just beginning.